My husband's first wife showed up at my door at midnight and warned me that my husband had hidden the cause of her sister's death, and the same thing was about to happen to me. I had been married to Adam for 2 years when it happened. I want to be honest about who I was when I met him. I was 29, my father had just passed away, and I had come into a significant inheritance that I had no idea what to do with. My family is old money on my mother's side. The trust that came down to me was just under $4 million, plus a beach house in North Carolina I had grown up summering at. I was grieving and lost and a little numb to everything. And then Adam walked into my life at a charity gala my mother had dragged me to. He was 34, charming, attentive in a way I had never experienced. He told me he had been widowed himself 3 years earlier, that his first wife had passed from a long illness, and that he understood grief in a way most people did not. He never asked about money. He never seemed interested in the inheritance. He was the first person who made me laugh after my father's funeral. We were married within 11 months. I told myself I had been lucky. I told myself my father would have liked him. Then on a Thursday in October at midnight, in the middle of a thunderstorm, a woman knocked on my front door. Adam was out of town for a work conference in Chicago. I almost did not answer. When I opened it, there was a woman about my age standing on my porch, soaked through, holding a manila folder against her chest to keep it dry. She asked me if my name was Claire. I said yes. She told me her name was Rebecca. She told me she had been Adam's first wife. I let her in. I gave her a towel. I sat her at my kitchen table and made her tea while my hands shook. I was 29 years old, alone in my house at midnight with a stranger who had just identified herself as my husband's dead wife. She was not dead. Adam had told me she had. He had told me about a long illness, about a hospice, about a funeral he had cried describing. Rebecca walked me through all of it. She had simply left him. She had changed her name. She had moved 3 states away. She had been in hiding from him for almost 3 years before she had heard, through a mutual contact, that he had remarried. She had spent the last 2 years tracking me down. Then she opened the folder. Her sister Hannah had married Adam before her. Hannah had come from money too. Her family had owned a regional grocery chain in the Midwest. When Hannah had married Adam at 27, she had been the sole heir. Within 18 months of the wedding, Hannah had started getting sick. Stomach pain, fatigue, strange neurological symptoms that doctors could not explain. She had been in and out of hospitals for almost 2 years. Adam had been the model husband through all of it, attending every appointment, taking notes, mixing her medications, bringing her meals. She had died at 29. The official cause was kidney failure from an unknown autoimmune condition. The life insurance policy Adam had taken out on her in the first year of their marriage had paid out $2 million. He had also inherited her share of the family business, which he sold within 6 months for an additional 3. Rebecca had been Hannah's older sister. She had not suspected Adam of anything during Hannah's illness. She had grieved him as a brother-in-law. A year after Hannah's death, Adam had reached out to her at a memorial, and one thing had led to another, and they had been married a year later. She told me she had been in too much shock and grief to see what was happening. She told me she had been a willing fool. 6 months into her marriage to Adam, Rebecca had started getting sick too, the same stomach pain, the same fatigue. She had been making her own coffee one morning and noticed that he had already prepared the creamer for her, set it out on the counter, the way he did every morning, lovingly. Something in her had gone cold. She had poured it down the sink. The next morning she had done the same. By the third morning, the symptoms had started to ease. She had taken a sample of the creamer to a friend who worked in a chemistry lab. The friend had called her back 2 days later and told her, very seriously, that she needed to get out of her house immediately. Rebecca had left that afternoon. She had taken nothing but her purse. She had not stopped driving until she crossed the state line. She slid the folder across the table to me. The lab results were inside. Hannah's medical records were inside. Photos, pharmacy receipts, a copy of the life insurance policy on Hannah, and another copy of one Adam had taken out on Rebecca in the first month of their marriage that Rebecca had never agreed to and had only learned about after she left. She told me she had not gone to the police back then because she had no idea where Adam was, and she had been terrified. She had spent every minute of the last 2 years building this folder. She told me she had come to me now because she had hired a private investigator 6 months ago to find out who Adam had married next, and the investigator had handed her a profile of me, including my net worth. She told me she was so sorry. She told me I needed to start being very careful what I ate and drank in my own home. I did not sleep that night. I sat at the kitchen table after Rebecca left and looked at my coffee maker. I thought about the smoothies Adam had been making me every morning for the last 4 months, ever since I had mentioned wanting to be healthier, putting them together himself. I thought about a stomachache I had been having on and off for weeks that I had assumed was stress. I did not pour anything out. I did not change a single thing about how I behaved. The next morning when Adam got home from his trip, I kissed him at the door and asked him how Chicago had been. He made me a smoothie. I drank half of it in front of him, then carried the rest with me to the bathroom and poured it into a sample bottle I had bought online overnight. I labeled it with the date. I did that every day for 3 weeks. I labeled bottles, I dated them, I kept them in a mini fridge I had installed in the back of my closet behind my winter coats. I called the same lab Rebecca had used. I told my doctor in private what I suspected, and asked her to run a heavy metal panel and a few other specific tests. She did. It came back showing exactly what Rebecca's tests had shown for Hannah. Low-level thallium poisoning, accumulated over months. I called Rebecca. I called my family attorney. I called the police. The detectives asked me to stay in the house for 2 more weeks while they coordinated with the lab and prepared their case. They wanted Adam caught in the act, not just on chemistry. I lived with my husband for 2 more weeks knowing what he had been doing to me. I smiled at him over dinner. I told him I loved him before bed. I drank the smoothies in front of him and emptied them into bottles in the bathroom afterward. They arrested him on a Tuesday morning at the kitchen counter while he was making me breakfast. He had just opened the container of thallium he had been keeping inside a hollowed-out container of protein powder in the pantry. The detectives walked in through the back door. I was standing in the hallway. He looked up and saw me, and he understood, in that 1 second, that I had known the entire time. He's in prison now. He took a plea deal to avoid a death penalty trial. 40 years for what he did to Hannah, plus what he tried to do to me. He never gets out. Rebecca and I have dinner once a month. She is the only person on this earth who fully understands what my last 3 years looked like. I changed every lock in my house. I drink my own coffee now. Subscribe for more daily videos.